House believes the government's efforts to promote certain trades is an impediment to effective response to climate change. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about the certain trades that the government is promoting, we are simply talking about certain sectors in the economy that the government chooses to prioritize over others. And when we're talking about an impediment, this is simply something that acts as a barrier to the effective climate change that we're actually trying to achieve. But what exactly is effective climate change when we're talking about a third world country, for example, Kenya? When we're talking about effective climate change, effective response to climate change, that looks like lowering of the temperatures that already exist. That also looks like increasing the arable land that exists in our country, right? That is also protection of natural resources that we already have right now. But ladies and gentlemen, because of this motion, we are here because the problem is government has chosen to actually promote certain sectors of the economy that are detrimental, that are reducing the efforts that we're actually using, right? So let us look at some of these things that government is doing to actually take us back. Let's look at the coal that is actually being processed in Lamu. Let us look at that. Let us look at the effects that coal has on the environment. Let us look, ladies and gentlemen, at the statistics that actually say that 40% of CO2 emissions globally is contributed by coal. So when the government of Kenya is actually trying to propagate for coal being used in our country, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that actually a step back? Let us look at the detriments of CO2 emissions that are going to happen on our own country. So, number one, we combust the coal, right? Fumes go up, we destroy the ozone layer. Destruction of the ozone layer means increase in global warming, increase in temperatures, something that we're actually trying to reduce. Let us look at the acidic rain that will actually come from this. Acidic rain that will actually make Lamu in and of itself an arable land, because now once the soil has been polluted, ladies and gentlemen, what is actually going to grow, right? Let us look at the rise in sea levels that is actually going to come from this because of the melting of the ice caps that is actually going to be increasing the water levels that is actually going to be existing in the oceans that are around Lamu. Ladies and gentlemen, when the government chooses to propagate for the use of coal in our country, that is not a step forward, it is a step back. While it is trying to actually fulfill the energy deficit that already exists, that is fine, we understand the need, but is the method justified? Is the trade-off justified? Are we willing to trade more energy for a bad environment? Let us look at the 2,500 trees that have been cut down from Mlolongo to James Gishuru Junction to allow for the construction of the expressway. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that Nairobi is a CBD, but right now, as compared to 10 years ago, Nairobi has gotten hotter. Are we willing to work under these conditions? Fine, we have a better road. I mean, God knows the Wayakiwe traffic was a 2-hour business. But now we are getting from Kikuyu to Nairobi in 20 minutes. And that is fine. But am I really willing to trade those 2 hours for the hot conditions that I'm going to be working under for the next 7 hours? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a trade-off that we're actually supposed to be looking at. Is government effort actually helping us to increase effective climate change, or are we actually taking a step back? When government wants to improve infrastructure, I believe that environmental concerns should be at the top of the list. We should put environmental concerns, climate change concerns, ladies and gentlemen, should be at the top of the list, right above economic progression.
It is clear knowledge that climate change is a looming problem in the society, right? Particularly in the Kenyan government, whereby we look at what kind of infrastructure we seek to grow at the expense of climate change. Therefore, we need to understand that there is no impediment that is highlighted in this case, and we have to understand that mitigation goes a long way and requires technology, as well as we cannot only adopt to the climate change problem we already have. So, what are the certain trades that have been put forth by the government to improve the infrastructure and also improve the tourism sector? As we already know, tourism and agriculture is the backbone of the Kenyan economy. Now, we want to understand that agriculture needs to diversify, and therefore it equally needs to change with the patterns of the climate change. Climate change in our world looks like effects in temperature and rainfall variation, and therefore we know that there is a lot of variation in rainfall in the Kenyan economy. Thus, we need better mechanisms to cope, and these certain trades do not impede in any way. Improving the infrastructure is improving the Kenyan economy in itself. Take, for instance, the Lamu port. When we want to address that climate change will be affected by expansion of the Lamu ports, I will show you that there will be less oil spillage as we can account for the relocation of the species that will be endangered and question the effect of climate change on the environment. And thus, we show you that being a society that is dependent on tourism and agriculture, we need to improve our tourism sector and improve the economy in return. And that brings us to understanding that agrotechnology goes in the run to improve the mitigation of the policies that have been put in place to address climate change. Agrotechnology looks like biodiversification, improvement in intercropping, improvement in drought-resistant crop, and using efficient methods such as solar panels and reduction in the emission in greenhouses that counter the effect of climate change. The government treads in to improve the infrastructure and bring in innovation in the technology, because mitigation, as I've already told you, requires technology. We cannot do this without better infrastructure in the government. And if we want to fight infrastructure, then therefore, how do we address the looming problem of climate change? We need to build a better resilience to adapt, and therefore these certain trades in infrastructure, improving tourism, improving the agricultural sector, do not in any way hinder or hamper the effective response to climate change, because effective response is pushing for this mitigation. Technology is required in this mitigation. Agriculture needs to grow to improve our economy, because if we are stagnant, we are more or less still supporting and hampering the climate change in itself. So these certain trades, such as infrastructure growth, these certain trades, such as tourism growth, in turn improves and enhances the effective response to climate change. And we want to show that when we choose to prioritize infrastructure, we also enhance the response we have towards climate change, because when you understand the alternative ways the economy can be productive and yet less harmful to the climate, we will be able to adapt and identify production system that can best address the climate change problems we already have. We agree that climate change is a looming issue in the society and that it needs to be addressed, and fighting infrastructure is not the way to go about it. Rather, we should take up arms and be a society where we look forward to push the climate change agendas and give proper mechanisms to fight climate change.